Matt, it's a pleasure to have you on, my friend. Always a pleasure to talk with you, and this podcast is going to be a fun one, mostly because you and I get to hang.
Yeah, stoked for it.
I'll take these glasses off. So Matt and I go way back, thank God, one of the first agencies to hop on Prism. Um, but this conversation got sparked because you and I were talking about data and your perspective on marketing lists and the agent perspective, the artist perspective. And I thought it was a really interesting conversation, and it's a live conversation. Like, should promoters share email data or not? And what are the pros and cons to it? And I thought you had a really enlightened perspective. You were also one of the first agents to look at insights and really cheer it on. And I know you're a fan of what we're doing with insights, and you believe that more data just helps the industry. So I want to dive into that convo. But that's really it. And we'll go from there. But like, yeah, what is your take on if you're working with a promoter and why they should share their data with you from the email perspective, and just like preference it as well. Like give your context into how you're thinking about this conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think if you zoom out from, the individual show, it's the artist's biggest fans, right? The people that actually buy a ticket and come to your show, I would say are the most valuable people in your fan base, right? And aside from the people that don't go to your show, there's still things you want to do with customer data to get fan data from your audience, through giveaways online, through releasing music early, stuff like that. Um, but yeah, at the core of it, if you're collecting data effectively for years from as many promoters and shows as possible, and still being loyal to promoters and being fair about everything, um, you can see a really strong business model, I think, for independent artists. So while, a show here and there not getting the data, or, if there's a promoter in a market that we love to work with, but they have a strict no data policy, it's 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 not like it's a total, hey, red light, green light, no data, no show. It's not the only factor when it comes to picking a venue, obviously, or a promoter. There's so many great promoters out there. Um, but for the artist as a business, it's so critical because now they can let those people know when new music gets released. Now they can let those people know when a vinyl gets released that's maybe some special edition, So it's like, you can sell those people vinyl, merch, tickets,
First
and if you
drops.
don't,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And if you don't spam them, it's not in the artist's best interest to spam them. So as long as you do it right and offer your fan base cool stuff and let them know about shows, it helps the artist grow overall. So there's this direct thing about the show in the market, right? Which is, hey, like we're trying to grow this market from 100 tickets to 2,000 tickets, and if we can build a shitload of email data together, that makes that process easier. Um, but then there's also the indirect things, which is, online and releasing music and all that good stuff. Yo, I can't hear you.
I was on mute. Thank you so much. I fixed that. I'll trim that part. So outside of the conversation of like, why would you advocate to a venue that you want this data and it's good for the ecosystem? Outside of that conversation, you're just making the overall point that artists increase their financial viability from a business perspective if they're building their own marketing list. And I think that that's a point that no one could argue with. Like we all want the industry to be successful, and especially artists, right? Like I'm a big fan of artists collecting their customers' data so that they can interact with them in like a respectful way for like things that they want, that the audience is going to want, like the special edition vinyl drop or whatever. Um,
Right.
and okay, so that's the place where you're coming from, and I think that's really good context. But like when you're talking to a promoter, like let's address this concern. A promoter says, "Hey, if I give you the data on the show, you could go to AEG or Live Nation." and with the next show, and I could get cut out of the process. Whereas if I hold the data, like I guess then there's more incentive to go and work again with that promoter. It's a very competitive industry. I understand people's competitive perspective and like, but what is your counter to that? And Matt, I'll like periodically play the role of the promoter here.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I like
That's
I'm friends
cool.
with a lot of promoters and venues, so disclosure to the podcast, like I'm not going to necessarily be saying my opinions, but more so kind of advocating for like the perspectives that I've heard from promoters out there. So yeah, so what would you say to a promoter? Like, what's your case in sharing? Yeah, versus not sharing.
Yeah, I totally understand, the perspective because, I sympathize with promoters that have built bands and then, whether it's going to Live Nation or AEG or a different independent promoter, it kind of doesn't matter, which promoter it is, just, artists going to another promoter. I I I think if you can build a loyal relationship with the band and sharing data is part of that, the artist will be really incentivized to stay with you in the market and grow throughout the rooms in the ecosystem with you. I think it's only natural that periodically, if the artist has no choice on an avail or a venue and a promoter won't do a co-pro with you or something, maybe you have to go play a show here and there with somebody else. But I do think there, with most artists that can grow a market to multiple thousand tickets, there's usually a promoter that is their people on record, and I think you can have that relationship with sharing data. And also, I think like, we all deal with artists leaving us, like even on my side as the agent, like, I've helped artists build some pretty significant email lists and then, things don't work out and it's all good. But I still think it's my duty to them to share their fan data. But yeah, so I totally get the
Beautiful perspective.
perspective of it. Yeah, I
Yeah,
get the perspective because if someone bails on you in a not cool way and doesn't communicate well, I get the frustration. But
and then the
I
show
think I
pops up
think
in the competitor's inbox, and it's like, oh, why did I give the email list? And I
yeah.
appreciate that you empathize with them, but really you're making the point that this can actually increase loyalty to you versus decrease loyalty. And I think that's oftentimes this conversation is we deserve the data or we're like entitled to it. And it's like, no, actually, like this is what I love about your perspective is you're making a point that it's actually better for the promoter to share the data. It increases loyalty. And yeah, so anyway, I think that's a really curious take, man. And that's why one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation. And I
Yeah,
still
and real quick to go on that, like it's not like, yeah, we're only like there's promoters I've worked with for years that it's not their policy to share the data and they're great relationships. And, I hope one day they'll share the data. You know what I mean? But
Matt,
it, but it's all good, right now. So it's like it's not like it's like a perfect 100% or anything, but yeah, and then I also think it's fair for, the promoter to get the data. Like if I have a cool rock band that sells 800 tickets in a market or something, where whatever the number is, I don't care if you use those emails to market to a different rock band show in a 250 cap room that's struggling, and you're like, hey, maybe if we hit these other rock fans that like the similar type of music, like the affinity artist thing. So I think it's fun. I look at it like let's give both sides the data, and then also
yep.
it typically does lead to less marketing costs if the artist actually has an effective in-house marketing team that does email marketing throughout the cycle. And then that's less work the promoter has to do, and they don't have to pay anything for it. Like nobody has to pay for email marketing once you have the data. So it could lead to less, ad spends on social media, which get really expensive. Like, you know, it's just direct to consumer marketing. It kind of doesn't really matter what industry you're in. It's just that real simple way to do it.
No, I love that. And okay, so I'm gonna keep throwing the perspectives at you. So what if the promoter says to you, all right, you know what, Matt? Then no guarantee. You just rent the room and you're the one that takes the risk, and then sure, have the data and whatever. Yeah. Like I think the
Yeah.
perspective is like if we're buying the show, we control the data, but then alternatively, if the artist wants the data, then yeah, again, like then just rent the venue.
Yeah, I mean, I know artists do rent venues in some cases. It's not the norm. I haven't. I've done pretty DIY style things in small cap rooms or like a brewery or something that's just like, hey, 600 cap or something. Just run your own ticketing and keep the door, and that's super easy. We just run it and run the ticketing, and then all the money goes in the artist bank account or something. Um, so yeah, I think it depends on the artist. Like if you're confident in the sales and the rental price is fair, yeah, I think you could definitely do that, and then you just self-ticket the show. I think you just have to make sure the door person is in lockstep, with you.
How do
It
how do you
creates an extra
combat?
step or two. It basically creates an extra step or two, but it is a valid option to
Yeah,
do.
absolutely. In that situation, how do you combat the artist's need to essentially fundraise for the tour by the guarantees? And like getting that upfront money, being able to get the tour moving, having the uncertainty that they're not going to be in like a $300,000 hole before the tour ends. Like, do you just completely look past that? And is that like is that a challenge with artists? Like, will they then say, all right, you know what? Yeah, what's your perspective there?
Yeah, that definitely just all depends on the artist, I would say. There's some art. Typically, if you take the door deal, you have more upside to make more money. Just typically. Sometimes it doesn't shake out like that, but usually, if you take the door deal and you're going to sell the room out or sell it at least 70-ish%, maybe a little less than that even, typically the door deal is more lucrative anyways. Um, but there are some artists, that are maybe just not financially structured to take as much risk, and you can just, go for a more traditional guarantee plus back end route too. So that really does depend on the artist. The other thing you could do is like you could try that out in your hometown, where you don't have travel costs and lodging costs, and there's I would say there's certain dates that are probably lower risk than others, that you could try or experiment on.
So you're in certain situations willing to rent the room and fine with the promoter kind of giving you that ultimatum. Do you would you still kind of go to bat for like even in the guarantee situations, the data should be shared? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I would say so. Because
Yeah.
I just the way I look at it is, you were partners on the show. You have this awesome venue that we're really grateful to be in, and we're bringing our fans there, and let's let's make some money and share the data and have a great show.
Yeah. While I think you're like you're in integrity with saying like, hey, we're not going to use our request for data to stop the show. If it's the right venue, it's the right venue. But at the same time, surely there's a proclivity to work with venues that, do have that path of least resistance set up. Like they're always willing to share the data. And alternatively, it does make them competitive against other people in your perspective. And you don't want to hold that in like, like in a totalitarian way. But like, anyway, yeah. What do you think about that?
In terms of like the competitive edge of one versus the other, is that what you're
Do
saying?
people have a competitive edge that are willing to share your data in your mind? And then as a result, do you go more towards those people? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think if you said like, yeah, in a th theoretical world where like two venues are identically equal and one shares the data and one doesn't, yeah, I think you can sell more tickets in the long run with the venue and the promoter that's giving you the data. But that's everything all said and done equal. Like that's just like that's not
It is the
reality.
edge cases where it just
Like that's not reality. It's like, hey, I'm in this market and these promoters are the best promoters or they have the best rooms and this is where the band needs to be. It's all, I wish they would share the data. No bad blood if they won't. Hopefully one day they will. But yeah, it's not this like you don't share the data, like you're out. There's obviously plenty of promoters out there that don't share the data still that have great businesses.
yeah.
So, but then, I don't know. There's no real number that who shares and who doesn't, but I would say like at least half the promoters I work with share the data, but everybody's different. So like
At least
it's
half.
that's not
Wow.
that's not really that's not really like a number like people can go off of. Like that's
Yeah.
just like kind of
I love that you're again returning to this perspective that, hey, sharing the data means we all make more money in the long run. And I wonder what a promoter would say to combat that. And, outside of like, I don't make more money if you take the show to AEG, and then you address that too. Or, um, yeah, like I don't know, like it's a cure. If the artist is marketing the show and they have better data, like why wouldn't that also help the show? And I think again, that's a different way. That's an interesting way to come at it. Do you see what I'm saying? That some agencies approach it as like in a more forceful way, or like a more entitled way, better yet. And I really just like your approach better.
Yeah, I mean, I thank you. But yeah, I think it's not like, you're not really going to get anywhere just like being being overbearing about it, you know.
Yeah,
It's the way things have been for a while. And I think just, through seeing the results over the last, 5 years since I've been really getting active on it and trying to get as many email lists from as many shows as possible, I've just been able to, see the positive impacts from it,
yeah,
and it just helps simplify things, it's like it's not a solution to everything, but if venues are struggling, and it's always a challenge to market shows. Like selling tickets is so hard. Sending an email to let people know about a show at the on sale a couple times during the mid cycle and a couple times during the closing cycle is so little effort and pretty high result.
yeah. So another thing that I want to segue to is insights. So Prism launched a data share that's similar to Polestar, in where promoters can pool box office reports and then look at that data. And it's only box office reports; it's not ticket sales. So it's really like I love Polestar, but you could think of it as a modern version of Polestar. And I showed it to you, Matt, and you were very excited about it. Like I wasn't sure how agents would feel, but your perspective was that insights is healthy for the industry. So I think this is somewhere where you're putting your money where your mouth is. And like, what was your reaction when you first saw insights, and like, why do you think it's a good thing for promoters? Yeah. And for you ultimately.
Yeah, no, it was very cool in the way that it's the way that you've tied the ticketing companies, because you've tied the ticketing company into the results, right? So it just
Yeah.
pulls, so there's no room for corruption, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think like trustworthy would probably be a reliable, like real-time trustworthy source is actually really cool, you
Yeah.
know, and very useful, because I think it's better. I don't know why people would want to, hide or hold back hard ticket numbers. It's like it's all good. Sometimes shows don't do well, and sometimes, it's whatever, it happens. But I think it's cool that you can see what other artists are selling in other markets, so maybe you can bring them to your market. You can see if maybe you're getting over quoted, stuff like that. I think it's great, and I think box office data to help like drive decisions is great.
It's an amazing from like the promoter perspective. I think it's amazing for to hear that you as an agent are saying it's a good thing that a promoter can check if they're getting overquoted. And I think that's a radical way of thinking there, Matt. And it's innovative. And like, why why do you think that way? There's some mentality, not everyone, there's a lot of great agents out there, but there's a mentality out there that like you could win by overquoting. And I think you have like more of a game theory perspective, but I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Hmm.
Why do you think that's a good thing that promoters like are able to assess the risk with this data, whether the shows did good or not? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's different, classes of artists. Like there's independent touring artists, right? That are,
Yeah.
hard ticket acts, but then there's uh then there's online sensation acts, that have these insane numbers but super limited history, Um and everything in between, right? So I think it depends on the band that you're trying to book, right? And also, the quote always ranges, right? Sometimes it's a routed date and you get the band for a great deal, because it's a Sunday and they're coming through and they just didn't have anything on the table, right? Or if it's a fly date, sometimes the quote can be significantly more. So, I think the context is always key to the quote, but I think you do it for, at least if you're like a headline act and trying to find some sort of way to value yourself, I think you do have to have some sort of tie into the headline numbers,
Yeah.
um
Like
on
you
what you,
want
on,
to
of
be
what
able,
you
you
do,
want the promoter
and
to look
that
at your data.
yeah, and
You
that's what helps you if someone, because people overquote, but also venues will underquote, or under offer, and then you can hit them back and say, hey, look, you sent me this offer, but we made 2x this on our last headline show in the market. Can you get us up a couple slots on the billing? And then they might be like, oh man, I didn't realize you're doing this kind of business. Yeah, sure. Let's revisit the offer. So
and yeah,
I
and
I,
by
I think it goes both
own
ways.
insights to see that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, thank you. And like let me tell a real story. I talked to a promoter, I won't say who it is or where it is, that just got on Insights, and a show that they had that Friday was tanking. And they looked at the artists on Insights, and at the time of the offer, they were told that the last time they played Smithsville or whatever the city, the band sold out a venue. It had actually sold 50% capacity. Uh, so right then and there, they bought the show with incorrect data, and
Yeah.
I'll be against that. And it was in that moment where I was like, man, this is why Insights is a really fair thing and needs to exist. And by the way, clubs are going out of business. Like like something's got to give here. Like they can't, have ticket sales go down, or sorry, beer sales go down, rent go up, and get overquoted on and lose money on the talent deal, and then survive. Like they're going to go out of business, sadly, especially the independent clubs. So like overselling a band is not a good thing for anybody, and there's not as many venues to tour. The deals aren't as competitive. So do you agree with me? Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, if you're knowingly overselling a band, yeah, I don't think many people would agree that that's like a good thing to do to people or for the ecosystem to, yeah, make independent clubs, go, lose money. Like, it's there are times where a promoter will get a fair guarantee quote, say they're going to do it, and then the artist has done good business in the market, but for whatever reason, maybe that promoter isn't doing a great job, or they didn't make the show a priority. And the artist is definitely responsible for promoting their shows hard, and if they're good at promoting their shows, they obviously sell tickets. But the promoter is the one that's in the market. There's a lot that the promoter can do to sell tickets and like activate the local scene. And if the promoter doesn't do any of that, I do understand the artist perspective of, the promoters, if the promoter's saying they got overquoted, but then didn't do anything to promote the show, it's a little invalid, right? But if
Yeah,
the,
there's
but
nuance.
if the, right,
There's
exactly. So
that
I
that's
think
a
it's
joke,
like
but
you have to be
that's
careful
very
there,
different
but
than
yeah,
like the show didn't work out, and there might have not have, like, let's
yeah,
say they even did the work for it to work out and it didn't,
for sure.
but the data was fair going into it, then that's like not an example where like the agent is wrong, and that's a good distinction.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, I think if people are transparent when they're making the deal and things don't turn out the way they hoped, that's different than, knowingly just knowingly just gouging somebody. So
yeah, you'd advocate not to do that.
yeah, for sure.
You want to hear some cool stuff coming down the pipeline for insights?
Yeah, for sure.
So we are introducing an AI prediction model that sits on top of insights data, so that it can look at, like, is this artist trending on the internet up, down, or middle? Like, how do they do in similar markets to you? And really like help the promoter arrive at like a prediction of how well the show will do. 500 tickets, optimal ticket price 35, and 800 sold. And I think the point of insights is not to give like our logo is a palantir, it's a crystal ball, and it's not to give the perfect prediction, but to like directionally help people understand where the show will go. And if they're looking at that at every single show they're booking, this is such an evolution in what they had before. They're not doing projections they're not doing like predictions based off of like historical data without this tool. It's like it's not people don't have access to it. So anyway, and with advancements in AI lately, this has now become possible, and it's something that
Definitely.
might be a quarter one thing for us, frankly. Yeah.
And do you get the daily report data? So like you can track the show historical data day by day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And again, it's all about helping a promoter lean into the right opportunity, right? And then everyone makes more money. And maybe there's a situation where the show's not right for them. Well, then the show can find a different venue that it is right for. And like there's some venue in town or opportunity in town that if it doesn't work for one promoter, it'll work for another promoter. So even the situations where like the data says maybe you shouldn't play the 1,000 cap room that you wanted to play. Like that's actually also good for the artist, even if it's like the
Yeah,
expectation for money, right? Am I
for
right about
sure.
that as well? Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, historical data is great. Like, shout out Real Count. We have been on it for a couple years now. So
Yes.
now I have like a couple shows of historical data to compare to shows that are happening in the future. And you can see if shows are outperforming or underperforming compared to the last shows or comparative shows. And yeah, it's really like knowing what you do and then seeing the impacts in real time ticketing data is amazing. And then also being able to see like, hey, oh wow, okay, we on sailed 33% better than last time through. We're off to a good start here, or like, damn, this show is sucking right now. We gotta figure something out.
Yeah, and I can't imagine. Shout out to Diana and Real Account. I really don't understand why an agency would not adopt that platform unless they have a perfect version of it in house or something like that, which I 100% doubt. It's not as good as Real Account. Major shout out to Real Account. Everyone should be on there. Every agent and even promoters too that like are doing shows in multiple rooms or planning tours. It's a really amazing solution. But like, yeah, data can lift this whole industry up through a tough time too, right? Like the headlines are not good right now, something's got to change seemingly.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's just sharing, there's a couple things we could just be sharing more, and
But
and see like, yeah, and I don't think it's like a one thing fix all by any
from
means,
an agency perspective, would it be
but
valuable to you to have like a data-backed AI prediction when you're from your side when you're like, negotiating with the venue? Yeah.
something like what, these are this band's last two market plays worth of ticket data. This is what we think is going to happen in the next one.
Exactly. Yeah. Like if it's fed booking data, it can like tell you too when you're heading into a show. Because like the other side is like, oh, the promoter knows the average gross sales is going to be like $10,000. So like, anywhere from a $3,000 to $6,000 guarantee, like feels copacetter for that or whatever because of the data. But I'm also making the case that like, wouldn't that be helpful for you so that you're asking for a guarantee that like makes sense from the data and you have more confidence in your asks as well, asks as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what would be interesting, I think you'd have to test it out to see how reliable it is, right? So I think,
Again, yeah,
you know
not a
what I mean?
precise number, a range.
Yeah, but like,
Yeah.
I could see, let's say you have, 100 shows or whatever that number that a statistician needs to hit to satisfy the results. Like, let's say you have like 100 shows worth of daily ticket data to ingest for an artist, then you put it into the AI, and then you say like, okay, I'm gonna put a show on sale in Greenville, and or your next tour, you just have it predict, right? Based on the past 100,
Yeah.
see what all the predictions are, and then see what all of them actually play out to, you know?
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
think I think every band's fan base is definitely different. Like there's bands that on sale 50% and then it kind of chills, There's bands that on sale basically nothing and then it trickles, it's I'd be curious to see what it could do just by ingesting a specific band's fan base and behavior, basically.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. We've talked with like companies like Hive about if a promoter chooses to connect their Hive data to insights, we can recommend you bands that are popular in your own audience. And like, and by the
Yeah,
way,
that's cool.
here's how they performed in the past. So you could get close to what an offer would look like. And again, that just doesn't exist right now. So it's very exciting, I think, for creating opportunity for everybody. And a big thing with getting insights off the ground was starting to what was convincing people that collaborating with data is a good thing. And the industry surprised me. Like a lot of people were really receptive to that idea. And I think there's a lot of people who like think thoughtfully about the future of the industry and wanted to go to a better place. And I think you're one of those people. Yeah. And sometimes the conversation gets like again heated, but you're everything where you're coming from, no one could argue with. And this is what I know about you as a person. So anyway, it's really interesting perspective, man. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have all the answers or anything, but yeah, it's just it seems logical. I still I sympathize with promoters, obviously that are still, not seeing it that way and feeling burned sometimes, just to emphasize that. But yeah, I think, what do you have to lose to try it out too and see if it works with a couple people as well,
It was pretty, yeah, it was pretty profound to hear that you have like your like bands leave you too, or the propensity for a band to leave you too is there for you too as the agent. Um, and you choose to build the list for them anyway. And when they go, you send them with their list and that's just like a really interesting perspective. Like I think a lot of people aren't thinking about it from that lens too, is that like, hey, like a band might move on from this agent. Like it was the first time I had considered that perspective when you said that to me. I was like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
good
we
point.
definitely do it in tandem with the managers we work with too. But yeah, like the agent's in a critical spot to collect data because they're the ones booking the shows and they're in touch with the promoters who hold the data.
So how did you get into all this stuff anyway? Why are you booking bands for a living? Yeah, tell us the story.
Okay. Um, let's see. Well, I started doing it in college and then really liked it. And, touring with bands is a great, way to see the country and the world it's turned out to be. So, a lot of the people that I love, like Caleb, the co-founder of Atlas with me, my brother Luke, who we work together, that's a dream. Um, Graham, who does all our finances, he's amazing. Sam Heekin, Garrett, everybody else. Like, yeah, it's great. I feel lucky to work with a tight-knit crew.
Man, I love the simplicity in your story. It's like you started in college and just liked it, and it turns out it's a beautiful lifestyle as well, and you can make a living doing it. Like,
Yeah, I
what
mean, it was a
reason to
grind
do
early on,
something?
don't get me wrong, like the early
It is a
days, but
grind.
but it was whatever, you make no money, but you're getting to travel around. So yeah, I mean, I would definitely get my hours in booking shows in front of my computer, but then I definitely would be like, hey, I might as well go to all these cool places that you get to go. And there, we've managed a couple bands as well over the years, in addition to booking.
Yeah.
And so, there's a little more face time that you spend with a management client in that way too. So,
I love it.
yeah, it's been great.
Has the industry when did you book your first artist? What year and how has the industry changed and how has like deal making changed since then?
Let's see, probably like when I was booking shows in college, just like real low level gigs, probably 2011-ish.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then it was a side, I was just middleman college gigs basically in my last couple of years of college. And then I started working as an assistant up at an agency in Burlington, Vermont. And I was basically just working with a bunch of jam bands and funk
Which
bands.
agency?
Hoplite,
Cool.
Hoplite Touring.
Yeah.
Um, And so, yeah, I got exposed to just like, yeah, really hard touring bands. It was funny, like all those, I think the biggest difference I've seen is how back then it felt like, and it's only, I haven't been doing it insanely long, but at least back then there was way more walk-up sales. Like if a show in a 600 cap room had 200 walk-ups, you were like, sick.
Mm,
This is gonna walk up 300 people.
yeah.
Now
Yeah.
yeah, like, and I think the jam scene does tend to walk up more than some other scenes, but and that's mostly what we were in. But yeah, I noticed that has changed, and even with my own clients over the years. Like, I've definitely still worked with jam bands throughout the years, still here and there. But even the other artists of different genres, rock and indie rock and folk and stuff like that, they definitely used to do more walk-ups.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, the world has moved away from
y-
walk-ups, right? With cash.
yeah.
You know?
And I remember the days when the Facebook ads first came out before all the fi
Yeah.
privacy policies, and like those ads were insanely effective. Although I'm happy that I'm happy that they did the privacy policies. I think it's better for the for humanity.
Dude,
But
I was
but like
advertising. Yeah.
but there was an era I remember where you would spend like 30 bucks on a Facebook ad and sell like $300 worth of tickets, you know?
Yeah.
Or sorry, like
That's
35
incredible.
tickets. Sorry, like 35 tickets. And if you're a band doing like a
I was like
200K.
300. That's a
Yeah,
huge.
yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, like 35 tickets off spending 20 bucks on a Facebook ad. And
That's like a dollar a ticket. That's amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you're in a
Big on
band
all.
doing a 200 cap room, which was like all the stuff we did back then, it was like unreal, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think the world has just moved more towards more comfort with using technology. I mean, the next thing that'll be curious is to pull up from your phone. Hey, buy the tickets for youth in the next what's the next youth in Austin show? Oh, April 4th at 13th floor elevators. Okay, buy those tickets. Okay,
Yeah,
general admission done. Like, you authorize your credit card and cool, I just got tickets to that show and it shows up in my phone on my calendar or whatever. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. I can't wait for that ticket buying experience. Yeah.
No, I know. Yeah, yeah, I'm sure it'll happen at some point.
Yeah, agentic ticket buying is fucking interesting. And by the way, I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid fully, Matt. Like, we can't let society turn into Terminator. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, no, no.
AI, like, keep the guardrails on AI, keep the humans in charge. And man, what's your perspective on AI? Is it something you spend time thinking about?
Oh man, that's a rabbit hole. I would say on the surface level, it's like I think it's still good to come up with your own ideas
Nice.
and keep certain things, you know,
Human.
things that you come up with on your own. But then there's obviously a bunch of really cool things with AI, like I think like data analyzation and like admin, like the real count thing is amazing. That saves you so much work for, our incredible support staff. They don't like when they had manual counts compared to real counts is like you're saving 90% of the time or more, you know?
Yeah.
It's like you just get all this time back that you
Yeah.
spent manually doing ticket counts.
Yeah.
So, and then yeah, like I said, like the historical data is super valuable to look at too. So, yeah, that's that kind of stuff. I think it's great.
With AI, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
What are the things that you should keep human that you mentioned? Yeah.
I would say like, experiences with your family or I don't know. I still think it's fun to plan vacations or like trips on your own instead of asking the AI to plan you a trip. But also if you want to use the AI to plan you a sick trip, it's all good to each their own.
What about
Like,
writing your wedding vows?
yeah, I would say that's probably a non-AI move.
Oh my God. When AI first came out, my cousin was late as usual to writing his wedding vows. And I was like, have you heard of ChatGPT? And it blew his mind.
Get
And
out of here. Oh
it
my
helped him.
God.
And I was like,
That's
yo,
great.
do not just take whatever it spits out. Like, use it as a
Yeah,
tool.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
It's an assistant for you.
Yeah, man, it's pretty fascinating, man. It's helping Prism move a lot faster with engineering, which is, I think, a very important thing for us to utilize. And the platform's just getting better and better and better at a faster rate. And like we've always wanted to, I feel like we've always done that as a company. And hopefully, in you joining Prism, you've seen us improve it over the years. But like
Yeah,
now,
no doubt.
go light speed now. It's really cool, man. Yeah. Why did you hop on Prism? You were one of the first agencies.
Um, oh man, well, obviously it was crazy times with COVID, so we had no shows to book. And and yeah, so a lot of people were on unemployment at that point. We hadn't run out of unemployment, I remember when you hit us up about the idea. And yeah, I think we just had time for a project, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and 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 we were doing we were still getting it done on the previous platform we were on, but you guys, we really connected at a couple conferences, I remember, and just were spitballing. And then yeah, it sounded like you guys wanted to make something pretty cool, so it was interesting time, good timing. We're thinking back on it, if it was like full work mode, booking shows all day
Yeah.
long to squeeze this in, like I don't know, maybe I'm sure we still could have helped, but I don't think we could have
Yeah.
like gone as all in as we did with y'all.
Yeah. Did you make the right decision?
Absolutely not. No, I'm kidding. No, we love it. We love it. It's amazing.
Cool. How has it changed your business and like where does it shine? And, like what's the most useful things you use it for?
I would say it definitely, like, if the agent, I think there's like two situations. Like there's an agent that's maybe, getting their book of business going, and they don't have, people helping them with their shows and their admin work and support staff. And they, have to book the shows and then enter it all into Prism and do all that. I think that's a great thing that people need to learn how to do. And it keeps them organized, and that's all great. I think, when you really get to the point where, you have some help, and you as the agent can really just like live in your inbox and on your phone and collecting offers and talking to your artists and covering shows, all that good stuff everybody knows. Um, I think your support staff with Prism is so amazing, in terms of keeping everything organized, and like I can hop into Prism and look up data whenever I want, hard ticket data, deal memos. The tour managers get access to Prism so they can see contacts and they can see contracts. For the places that give us customer data, we can drop that Excel file in the show file. So, like, at the end of the month, someone on the artist team can go into Prism and pull all the customer data lists and dump it into their CRM or whatever they use. Um,
Love
and
it.
then the invoicing cycle is solid. So yeah,
Cool.
yeah, I think it makes it like it's
But
funny. Like I
that's an in the weeds feature there, the invoicing system that we built. Like I forget I like black it out because it was so like wild. Like it's the ability to pay out artists after like a bulk of shows and then track what you paid and what's owed and yeah, how much they made versus how much has been collected and who collected what money. It's like untangling a pretty serious mess and it took a while to get it right, but it works nicely now. And
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's like any piece of like gr great technology, it still has a learning curve,
oh
like
yeah.
you definitely you have to put the time in to understand it. Like Caroline, who I work with, she's a wizard at Prism. She
Yeah.
knows it way better than I do. I I do a lot of checking in on things in there, pulling information and data from there. But she does an incredible job of,
What do you think about the
uh,
connected show?
so great. Yeah. I mean, anything that can save the
Explain
people.
it. Explain it if you don't mind.
Oh, so if a Prism venue sends you an offer, that's a Prism PDF. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a link. And if you click that link, it automatically imports all the offer data from the Prism venue into the Prism agency software. So you want to take a quick double check, but it's pretty seamless and it takes all the work out of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, and that's that. Yeah, anything that can save, your support staff and the people that work with you time, is amazing. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
great. And we work with a lot of rooms on Prism. So, those offers come in all the time. So
Love
sure
it.
it's getting used a lot.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. One of my visions for the industry at some point is just like kind of getting everyone in the same system and the data flowing smoothly, eliminating duplicate entry. Like we have an SDK where people can plug into Prism and pull data out systematically. And I think it was just such an industry inefficiency that the promoter sends the offer, the agent rebuilds the offer in their system and tries to get the deal points right. Sometimes gets them
Yeah.
wrong. And people make mistakes. And it's like, look, the data's there. Just ingest the data from Prism. And we're in talks with other agency systems, whether they use Prism or not. I want them to be able to ingest a Prism offer and
Right.
with
Oh yeah,
ease.
exactly. It's like you're coming at
Yeah.
them from the venue side on that.
Yeah, one of the major agencies said they get more Prism offers than AEG. We're the second to Live Nation. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense with the amount of independent rooms you're in. It's
Oh,
amazing.
yeah, thank God. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful, man. And we're gonna keep making it better and better and better. Dude, what's your
Yeah, I get them all the time.
yeah. Let's let's wrap. This has been amazing. Before we do, like, here's a big silly question. not silly, but a big question. What's your biggest hope for the industry in the next 5 years with data and the economic headwinds the industry is facing, scalping? Like, what's the path through for this industry to be like thriving more than it ever has in 5 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's super hard to predict the future, right? But I would say I think you just kind of got to stay the course and weather the storm if you're in one, you know? Like I think there's some artists that are doing amazing, you know? There's some artists that aren't doing so hot, you know? I think there's some genres of music that are doing less than usual, and then there's others that are doing great, you know? So I think if you stay the course and just keep showing up, things get better. Just kind of, overall, in the long run. But I do think there are fundamental things like sharing the data could be a great way to just have more collaboration and alignment between promoter and artist, you know? So, I think it's, anything else in the same vein too, that helps us sell more tickets, and and I think also the local scenes in all these places are so important. So it's a bummer when you it's a real bummer when you see a venue go down, that's been a staple somewhere for multiple years or 10, 20, whatever, 30 plus years. They can be gone so quick and it takes so long to fill the void. So yeah, it's I think it's good for bands to build from 200 to 1,000 tickets, grinding it out, and getting really good at playing live shows
Matt,
and
yeah,
just and one last thing is like, and
yeah, yeah, please, please.
I think the online stuff is great, like it's a very cool tool and I love the bands that know how to work it and it's sick, and I'm not discounting that, but I also think you can't really shortcut the road, so I think if, it's like, go play the independent. Everybody should, I think, maybe more embrace the adventure of it instead of the money early on, and just enjoy, getting on the road and seeing the country and stuff like that. And shows are part of the journey.
Absolutely love it. I was in reflecting on your perspective. I think it's a really incredible one. The way you do business is you want to do the things that enables everyone to succeed. And I hope I don't come off as trite there. It's just really objectively true with you. And you do not play the zero sum game, at least not in the conversations we've had, and how I observe you operating in the world. And I think it's a perspective that needs to be out there more. It's like, how can we do business in a way that is the rising tide that raises all ships? And it's optimistic, and it's hopeful, and I think it's a true perspective, and it was a pleasure to like unpack it more. And I just appreciate you so much as a person, bro. This is so fun, and so good to get to know you over the years, and even going on an adventure too in South Carolina.
Yeah,
Together.
yeah, for sure, man.
Well, you're great
Yeah,
too.
I've
Yeah,
always appreciate you as well and your perspective. Yeah, thank you. And yeah, you're stoked to talk to you about this stuff, It's it's
yeah.
it's it's relevant, it's fun.
And
Enjoyed it. And
you have a great agency, man. You have a great roster of super dope bands.
thank you, man. Yeah, yeah. It's not just me. It's definitely a full squad with everybody else. But yeah, I appreciate the kind words.
Yeah, shout out Luke and Matt. Yeah, sorry, and Caleb, and yeah, the whole, and Caroline, and the whole crew. Yeah,
Hell yeah.
yeah. All right, one love, brother.
All right, man. Talk soon. Thanks again.